I am Darla Winstead, and if you'd told me 10 years ago that I'd be running an award-winning graphic design firm, I'd have laughed through my paint-splattered overalls. Back then, I was just the oddball in a family of pinstripe bankers, the one who'd rather sketch logos than balance ledgers. My parents, Harlan and Velma Rigsby, built a banking empire in Toronto, and my siblings, Wendell, Marla and Floyd, followed suit, all suits and spreadsheets. Me? I was doodling in the margins of their annual reports, dreaming of colors and shapes. They called it my little hobby, like I was knitting scarves instead of building a career. Every family retreat, they'd jet off to some exclusive lodge in Muskoka, claiming there was no space for me. No space, they said, for the daughter who didn't fit the Rigsby mold. I swallowed it year after year, pasting on a smile while they posted photos of their champagne toasts without me. But here's the thing. I never imagined my phone would ring at the perfect moment, flipping their world upside down. Before I tell you how that call changed everything, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. It started small, this feeling of being erased. I'd show up to family dinners with news, like landing my first big client, a local brewery who loved my rebrand, and Dad would nod absently, then pivot to Wendell's latest merger. Mom would pat my hand saying, "That's nice, dear," before gushing over Marla's promotion. Floyd, the youngest, would smirk and ask if I was still playing with crayons. I'd laugh it off, but it stung, like a paper cut you don't notice until it's red and raw. I wasn't just different, I was invisible. High school was where it crystallized. I'd spend hours in the art room, losing myself in posters for the spring musical or mock-ups for imaginary brands. My teacher, Miss Pritchard, saw something in me. She'd slip me design magazines, dog-eared pages of Paula Scher's work, and tell me I could be that good. I believed her. So when I won a national student design contest at 17, I thought my family would finally get it. I rushed home with the certificate, heart pounding. Dad glanced at it, muttered, "Good job," handed it back to talk about Floyd's debate team win. Mom framed Wendell's MBA diploma that same week. My certificate? It ended up in a drawer. I went to OCAD University, diving into typography and branding while my siblings studied finance at U of T. I'd visit home, portfolio in hand, eager to share my latest project, a sleek identity for a startup cafe. Marla would roll her eyes, saying, "Darla, when are you getting a real job?" Wendell would chuckle, like I was a kid, showing off a finger painting. I'd bite my tongue, thinking one day they'd see. One day, I'd make them see. That day felt closer when I started my own studio, Winstead Designs, 5 years ago. It was just me, a laptop, and a tiny office above a falafel shop. I hustled, cold calling clients, pulling all-nighters, learning to pitch. My first big break was a contract with a mid-sized tech firm, revamping their entire visual identity. They loved it. More clients followed. Awards started piling up, a Clio, a Dianad pencil. I was building something real, something mine. But to my family, I was still the quirky one, wasting time on arts and crafts. Last year I got an invite to the family's Muskoka retreat. I thought, maybe this is it. They're finally including me. I packed my bags, heart hopeful. Then Mom called. "Darla, sweetheart, we're so sorry, but the lodge is full." Full. Again. I stared at my phone, the same phone that would later buzz with the call that changed it all. That's when I knew. I wasn't just an outcast. I was done trying to fit their mold. The sting of that Muskoka snub lingered, but it wasn't new. Growing up, I'd watched my family build a shrine to my siblings' successes while my own were swept under the rug. It's not like I was failing. My work was good, sometimes great, but to the Rigsbys, anything outside banking was noise. I can still see the moments, sharp as glass, where they made me invisible. Take my 13th birthday. I'd spent weeks designing a poster for the school talent show, my first real project. It won a local art prize, and I was bursting to tell everyone. At dinner, I slid the certificate across the table to Dad. He barely looked up from his steak. "That's nice, Darla," he said, then turned to Wendell, who'd just made the varsity lacrosse team. "Now your game stats, son, that's something." Mom clapped for Wendell's athletic discipline, and Marla, 16 and already interning at Dad's bank, chimed in about his real achievements. Floyd, barely 10, mimicked them, saying my poster was just a drawing. I stared at my plate, the certificate crumpled in my lap. Then there was university. I'd kill myself over projects at OCAD, staying up until dawn perfecting a brand guideline or animating a logo. My second year, I won a regional design award for a nonprofit's campaign, my first taste of real recognition. I brought the plaque home for Thanksgiving. Mom smiled thinly, said, "Oh, how cute," and set it on the counter next to Floyd's Math Olympiad trophy, which got a full toast. Dad gave a speech about Marla's early admission to an MBA program, calling her the future of Rigsby banking. My plaque, it was in the dishwasher by dessert, mistaken for a serving tray. The worst was my first professional gig, right after graduation. I'd landed a contract with a boutique hotel chain, designing their entire visual identity, logos, menus, signage. It was huge for a 22-year-old. I invited my family to the launch party, thinking they'd see I was serious. Nobody came. Mom texted, "Sorry darling, Wendell's closing a big deal tonight." Marla posted a photo of her and Floyd at some banking gala, captioned, "Family Pride." I stood alone at the hotel, watching strangers praise my work, my phone silent. That night, I cried in my tiny apartment, wondering why my best was never enough. It wasn't just the big moments, it was the small ones too. Family dinners where I'd mention a new client, only for Dad to pivot to Floyd's stock market club or Marla's latest acquisition. Christmas, when Mom gifted Wendell a monogrammed briefcase and me a generic sketchbook saying, "For your little doodles." Even casual chats turned into lectures about real careers. Once, Marla cornered me all smug and said, "Darla, you're smart. Why waste it on artsy stuff? Join the bank. Be somebody." I laughed it off, but it burned. Be somebody? I was somebody. The pattern was clear. Wendell, Marla, and Floyd were the golden trio, their banking wins framed and flaunted. Me? I was the quirky footnote, my awards ignored, my passion patronized. I started keeping things to myself, not mentioning new projects or clients. Why bother? They'd just nod and change the subject. But deep down, I was storing it all. The hurt, the slights, the need to prove them wrong. I didn't know it then, but those years of being sidelined were fuel. They pushed me to build something they couldn't ignore, something that would make their no-space excuse look as small as it felt. And when I started Winstead Designs, I wasn't just chasing a dream. I was chasing the day they'd have to see me. The spark for Winstead Designs hit me like a lightning bolt in a coffee shop. I was 25, freelancing for pennies, sketching on napkins between gigs. A barista, Otis, noticed my doodles and asked if I'd design a logo for his side hustle, a craft soda brand. I said yes, mostly for the free lattes. But when I showed him the final design, a bold retro bottle cap with a fizzy twist, he freaked out, saying it was perfect. That moment, seeing my work light up someone's dream, was my aha. I wanted to do this for real, not just as a side gig, but as a legacy. The struggle was brutal. I rented a closet-sized office above that falafel shop, the kind of place where the walls smelled like cumin and the Wi-Fi cut out daily. I had no savings, no connections, just a beat-up laptop and a fire in my gut. Cold calling businesses was soul-crushing. Receptionists hung up. CEOs ghosted me. I'd pitch to anyone, bakeries, startups, even a dog groomer. Most said no. I ate instant noodles for months, worked nights at a print shop to pay rent, and cried when my first big pitch bombed. A tech startup liked my mock-up but said I was too green. I almost quit that night, staring at my empty bank account, wondering if Marla was right about real jobs. But I didn't quit. I studied, devoured design blogs, watched tutorials, dissected award-winning campaigns. I got better, sharper. My break came when that same tech startup, now desperate after a botched rebrand, called me back. I pitched again, this time with a sleek, intuitive identity that screamed innovation. They signed me on the spot. That contract paid my rent for a year and got my name out there. Word spread. A winery wanted a label. A festival needed posters. Each job built my portfolio, my confidence, my dream. Winstead Designs grew quietly, like a secret I kept from the world, especially my family. I hired a small team. Kermit, a quirky typographer, Selma, a branding genius, and Barney, our tech whiz. We moved to a proper studio, all exposed brick and plants, the kind of place I dreamed of. The awards started rolling in. A Clio for a museum campaign, a D&AD pencil for a sustainable fashion brand. My favorite was a Webby for an interactive app we designed for a kids' literacy nonprofit. I'd scroll through our reviews, clients calling us visionary, game-changing. It felt like flying. I didn't tell my family, not a word. When Mom asked what I was up to, I'd say, "Oh, just freelancing," and change the subject. Why? because I knew they'd diminish it. Dad would ask about revenue, Marla would smirk about hobbies, Floyd would make a crayon joke. I wasn't ready for their lens, not yet. This was mine, my empire, built from scratch, brick by brick. I'd walk into our studio, see my team brainstorming, and feel this quiet power. I was doing what I loved, and I was damn good at it. The real secret? We were on the cusp of something huge. A global ad agency, Vance & Quill, had scouted us for a partnership. They wanted Winstead Designs to lead a massive rebrand for a tech giant, think household name big. The deal was worth millions, with my name as creative director. It was the kind of thing that could redefine my career, put us on the map forever. I hadn't signed yet, but the papers were ready, the talks were hot, and my team was buzzing. I'd lie awake at night, heart racing, picturing the moment it all came together. But first, I had to survive the annual Rigsby family dinner, where I knew I'd be the odd one out again. This time, though, I had a secret they couldn't touch. The Vance & Quill deal was so close I could taste it, but the weight of the Rigsby family dinner loomed like a storm cloud. It was always the same. A lavish affair at my parents' sprawling Rosedale mansion, all crystal chandeliers and catered canapes, where I'd play the role of the quirky outsider. This year felt different, though. Winstead Designs was on the verge of a multi-million-dollar partnership, and I was juggling final negotiations while packing for the dinner. My phone pinged with emails from Vance & Quill's execs, tweaking contract terms, while I stuffed a blazer into my bag, dreading the inevitable jabs about my hobby. I wasn't sure I could stomach another night of their condescension, but skipping wasn't an option. Mom would guilt-trip me for months. I sat on my apartment floor, sketches and contracts scattered around me. Kermit had texted, all caps, "We're gonna crush this deal." Selma sent a mock-up of the tech giant's logo, sleek and bold with a note, "Your vision, boss." Barney was coding the app demo overnight. My team was all in, and it hit me how much I'd built, how much I'd hidden from my family. I hadn't told them about the awards, the studio, or this deal. Why would I? Last year, when I mentioned a small client win, Floyd snorted and asked if I was still coloring for a living. I laughed it off, but it cut deep. This time I'd keep my cards close. The dinner was tomorrow, and I was already bracing for the script. Dad would grill Wendell about mergers, Mom would fawn over Marla's latest banking coup, and Floyd would toss out some smug remark about my art projects. I'd smile, nod, and sip my wine, same as always. But my mind was elsewhere. Vance & Quill had set a signing date next week, and if it went through, Winstead Designs would be in every major design publication. I'd be creative director on a project that could shift the industry. I kept picturing my name in print magazine, not as Darla Rigsby, banker's daughter, but as Darla Winstead, visionary. I stood in front of my mirror, trying on outfits. The blazer felt too corporate, the dress too try-hard. I settled on a tailored jacket over jeans, professional but me. I wanted to walk in with quiet confidence, not like I was begging for their approval. My phone buzzed again. An email from Vance & Quill's CEO, confirming a final call tomorrow night, right after the dinner. Perfect timing, I thought. Or maybe the worst. What if I was dodging Floyd's barbs while negotiating a deal that could change my life? The thought made my stomach twist. I packed my bag, tossing in a sketchbook out of habit. Maybe I'd doodle during Dad's inevitable lecture about legacy. Driving to Rosedale the next day, the city blurring past, I felt this strange mix of dread and defiance. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had my team, my studio, my dream. But part of me, the part that still remembered being 13 with a crumpled certificate, wanted them to see me, just once. I pulled up to the mansion, its stone facade cold and grand, and took a deep breath. The deal was my armor, my secret weapon. I didn't know it yet, but that dinner was about to crack open everything I'd been holding back, and the phone in my pocket was ticking like a bomb, ready to go off at the exact right moment. I stepped into the Rosedale mansion, the familiar scent of polished wood and rosemary from the caterer's trays hitting me like a wave. The dining room was a spectacle. Long mahogany table, flickering candelabras, and my family already seated, their laughter sharp and exclusive. Mom, in a pearl gray dress, waved me over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dad, at the head, was mid-story about a banking deal, his voice booming. Wendell, Marla, and Floyd leaned in, nodding like disciples. I slid into my seat, the odd one out in my jeans and jacket, feeling like I'd crashed a board meeting. "Darla, you made it," Mom said, her tone syrupy. "We were just talking about Marla's new branch opening." Marla, all sleek hair and tailored blazer, gave a modest shrug, but her smirk said she loved the spotlight. I nodded, murmuring, "That's great," already bracing for the gauntlet. It started softly, like a warm-up. Dad asked, "So Darla, still tinkering with your little art thing?" His chuckle was a blade, and Wendell joined in, saying, "Yeah, what's it now? Posters for coffee shops?" I forced a smile, sipping my wine. "Something like that," I said, keeping it vague. No way was I mentioning Vance and Quill. The appetizers came, seared scallops plated like tiny sculptures, and the questions sharpened. Mom tilted her head, all faux concern. "Darla, don't you ever think about something stable, like what Wendell does?" Wendell puffed up, launching into a monologue about his latest merger. I nodded along, my fork poking at the scallop, thinking about Kermit's latest typeface design instead. Then Floyd, leaning back with a grin, tossed out, "I bet Darla's still using crayons, right?" The table laughed, and I felt my cheeks burn. "Actually," I started, "my firm's doing pretty well." But Marla cut me off, waving a hand. "Oh, that's cute, but let's talk real business. Dad, tell her about the offshore accounts." I swallowed the rest of my sentence, the room closing in. They weren't just dismissing me, they were erasing me. Same as always. The main course, roast lamb, drizzled with some fancy reduction, arrived, and the barrage kept coming. Dad leaned toward me, his tone patronizing. "Darla, you're what, 30 now? Time to grow up, join the family business. We could find you a desk job." Mom nodded, adding, "It's not too late to be part of something meaningful." Meaningful. The word stung, like my entire career was a childish scribble. I gripped my napkin, forcing a laugh. "I'm good, thanks. I like what I do." Floyd snorted, swirling his wine. "What, drawing logos? That's not a legacy, Darla, that's a side hustle." Marla chimed in, her voice dripping with pity. "It's sweet, really, but you can't live on passion. You need a real plan." The table nodded, a chorus of agreement, and I felt like I was shrinking. I wanted to scream about the Clio, the Webby, the millions on the table with Vance and Quill, but I didn't. Not yet. I just sat there, taking the hits, my phone heavy in my pocket. I knew the call was coming, the one that could flip this whole night on its head. For now, I let them talk, their words piling up like stones. They thought they knew me, thought they could box me into their mold. They had no idea what was about to hit them, and I wasn't going to tip my hand until the moment was right. The lamb was barely touched on my plate as the dinner conversation turned into a tribunal. The candles flickered, casting long shadows, and my family's voices grew sharper, more deliberate. Dad cleared his throat, setting down his wineglass with a clink that silenced the table. "Darla," he said, his tone heavy like he was about to deliver a verdict. "We've been talking as a family, and we've come to a decision." My stomach dropped. Mom reached for his hand, her face a mask of solemn agreement. Wendell, Marla, and Floyd exchanged glances, their expressions smug, like they'd rehearsed this. I gripped my fork, forcing my voice steady. "What kind of decision?" Dad leaned forward, his eyes cold. "You've had your fun with this art thing, but it's time to face reality. You don't fit with the Rigsby legacy, we're cutting you off. No more trust fund, no more family resources." The words landed like a slap. Mom nodded, adding softly, "It's for your own good, darling. You need to stand on your own without dragging the family name into your experiments." Experiments. My firm, my awards, my life, reduced to a hobby they could discard. Marla chimed in, her voice smooth but vicious. "It's not personal, Darla, we're just protecting the brand. Rigsby Banking is about excellence, not whatever you're doing." Floyd smirked, muttering, "Yeah, no room for glitter and glue." Wendell, ever the diplomat, added, "You can still visit, of course, but the business, the retreats, it's for those who contribute." Contribute. As if my work, my sweat, my sleepless nights were nothing. I stared at them, my family, their faces a united front. This wasn't just dismissal, it was exile. I opened my mouth to argue, to tell them about the Clio, the Webby, the Vance and Quill deal that could buy their precious bank twice over. But the words caught in my throat. They wouldn't believe me. They'd twist it, call it a fluke, a cute little win. My chest tightened, the room spinning. I'd spent years chasing their approval, and now they were severing me like a dead branch. The hurt was raw, but beneath it, something else stirred, anger, sharp and clear. I wasn't the kid with the crumpled certificate anymore. I'd built something real, something they couldn't touch, even if they didn't know it yet. Mom reached for my hand, her touch cold. "Darla, you'll thank us one day. You'll find your place." My place. As if I hadn't already carved one out, brick by brick, while they sipped champagne in Muskoka. I pulled my hand back, my voice low. "You think I need your money? Your name?" Dad raised an eyebrow, scoffing. "Don't be dramatic. You're not equipped for the real world." Marla laughed, a short, cruel sound. "What? You're gonna live off your doodles? Good luck with that." I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to make them see. But I didn't. Not yet. My phone was in my pocket, silent but heavy, a lifeline I knew was coming. The Vance and Quill call was scheduled for after dinner, and it would change everything. I just had to survive this moment, this final blow. I looked around the table, their faces smug and certain, and felt a strange calm. They thought they were cutting me loose, but they were handing me freedom. They thought they knew the end of this story. They were wrong. The air in the dining room felt thick, my family's verdict still ringing in my ears. I sat there, hands trembling under the table, their words, cut off, no legacy, no place, carving into me like knives. Dad was already moving on, gesturing for the caterer to bring dessert, as if disowning me was just another agenda item. Mom sipped her wine, avoiding my eyes. Marla whispered something to Floyd, and they both smirked. Wendell cleared his throat, about to launch into some banking anecdote, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Loud, insistent. The whole table turned to me, annoyed, like I'd interrupted their victory lap. I pulled it out, my heart pounding. The screen lit up. Vance and Quill, CEO. This was it. The call I'd been waiting for, scheduled for later, but coming now at the worst, or maybe the best possible moment. "I need to take this," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Dad scoffed. "Really, Darla? Now?" Marla rolled her eyes, muttering, "Probably her art supply guy." I ignored them, stood, and stepped into the hallway, the dining room's chatter fading behind me. I answered, and the CEO's voice, crisp and warm, filled my ear. "Darla, it's Claudia Vance. We're ready to sign. The tech giant loved your final pitch. Congratulations, you're leading the rebrand." My knees nearly buckled. This was the deal. Millions, global exposure, my name as creative director. Claudia kept going, detailing the timeline, the press release, the launch event. "We're announcing tomorrow," she said. "Your firm's about to be everywhere." I managed a "thank you," my voice catching, and she laughed. "No thank you, you're a game changer." I hung up, staring at the phone, the hallway's dim light casting shadows on the Rigsby family portraits lining the walls. My face wasn't in any of them, but it didn't matter anymore. I'd just landed the biggest deal of my career, and my family, still chuckling over their dessert, had no idea. I could have gone back and sat down, let their words fester, but something snapped. I wasn't invisible anymore. I walked back to the dining room, phone in hand, and stood at the threshold. They barely noticed me at first. Dad was slicing into a chocolate tart, Mom was praising Marla's latest deal. I cleared my throat, loud enough to make Floyd jump. "I have something to say," I started, and they looked up, more irritated than curious. "That call? It was Vance and Quill, a global ad agency. They just signed Winstead Designs to lead a multi-million-dollar rebrand for a tech giant." I paused, letting it sink in. Their faces froze. Dad's fork midair, Mom's wine glass tilted. Marla's smirk gone. I kept going, my voice steady now, each word a release. "My hobby has won a Clio, a Webby, a D&AD pencil. My firm employs a team, runs a studio, and just landed a deal that'll put us in every major design outlet tomorrow." Floyd's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Wendell shifted, uncomfortable. I looked at Dad, his jaw tight, and said, "You think I'm not equipped? I've built an empire while you were busy cutting me out." The room was silent, the kind of quiet that hums with shock. Mom stammered, "Darla, we didn't know," but I cut her off. "You didn't want to know? You decided I was nothing, and you were wrong." Marla tried to laugh, saying, "Come on, you're exaggerating," but it fell flat. They saw it now. The truth I'd hidden, the success I'd earned. My phone buzzed again, a text from Kermit. "We did it!" I looked at my family, their stunned faces, and felt the weight lift. This was my moment, and I wasn't done yet. The silence in the dining room was deafening, my words still hanging in the air like smoke. My family stared, their faces a mix of shock and something else. Guilt, maybe, or embarrassment. Dad's fork was still suspended, the chocolate tart forgotten. Mom's wine glass trembled in her hand. Marla's smugness had evaporated, her eyes darting to Wendell, who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Floyd, for once, had no quip. I stood there, phone in hand, Kermit's text glowing on the screen, and felt a surge of power. They'd tried to erase me, but I was undeniable now. Mom was the first to crack, her voice shaky. "Darla, why didn't you tell us? We could have celebrated." I cut her off, my tone calm but razor sharp. "Celebrated? Like you celebrated my high school art prize or my university award? Oh wait, you didn't." Her mouth closed, her cheeks flushing. Dad cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Now, Darla, let's not be dramatic. We're proud of you." "But—" I laughed, a short, bitter sound that stopped him cold. "Proud? You just disowned me. You said I don't fit your legacy. But let's be clear, your legacy is built on control, not pride." Marla leaned forward, her voice tight. "Okay, fine, you've got some big deal, but don't act like we're the bad guys. You never tried to be part of this family." That was rich. I turned to her, my eyes narrowing. "I tried, Marla. I showed you my work, invited you to my launches. You didn't show up. None of you did. You mocked me, called my career a hobby, left me out of your precious retreats because there was no space. But you know what? I made my own space." I held up my phone, the Vance and Quill email visible. This is my legacy," Floyd muttered. "Sounds like you're just showing off," but it was weak, and Wendell shushed him. Dad tried again, his tone softer, almost pleading. "Darla, we didn't know. Let's talk as a family. You're still a Rigsby. That name, Rigsby, used to mean everything to me. Now it felt like a chain." I shook my head. "You don't get it. You don't get to claim me now, not after you threw me away. You thought I was nothing, but I'm everything you're not. Real, honest, built from the ground up." Mom's eyes welled up, but I wasn't swayed. I'd seen her tears before, always followed by excuses. I took a step back, my voice steady. "You built a bank. I built a vision. You chase money. I chase meaning. And I don't need your approval or your money to keep going." I turned to leave, but not before one last look at their faces. Dad's jaw tight, Mom's hands twisting her napkin, Marla staring at the table, Wendell and Floyd frozen. They weren't laughing now. I walked out, the mansion's heavy doors closing behind me with a thud. The night air was crisp, my breath visible under the streetlights. My phone buzzed again. Selma this time, with a photo of the team toasting with cheap wine in the studio, captioned, "To Darla, the boss." I smiled, my chest loosening. The Rigsbys thought they'd broken me, but they'd freed me. I didn't need their table, their name, or their retreats. I had my team, my work, my truth. As I slid into my car, the engine humming to life, I felt taller, lighter. The road ahead was mine, and I was done looking back. Driving away from the Rosedale mansion, the city lights blurring past, I felt a weight lift, like I'd shed a skin I'd outgrown. The Rigsbys' rejection still stung, but it wasn't the gut punch it would have been years ago. I didn't need their table anymore. I had my own. My phone kept buzzing, texts from Kermit, Selma, and Barney piling up, each one a reminder of the family I'd chosen. They'd planned a late-night celebration at the studio, and as I pulled up to our brick-walled space, the glow from the windows felt like a beacon. Inside, the studio was alive. Kermit had strung fairy lights across the ceiling, giving the place a warm, defiant sparkle. Selma was pouring cheap, sparkling wine into mismatched mugs, and Barney was fiddling with a playlist, blasting some indie rock anthem. A banner hung across the back wall, hand-painted in Kermit's wild script, "Winstead Designs, World Domination." They cheered when I walked in, and I laughed, the sound raw and real, so different from the forced smiles at my parents' dinner. Selma handed me a mug, her eyes gleaming. "To Darla, who just landed the biggest deal in design history." We clinked, and Kermit, ever the goof, added, "And to sticking it to the suits." I grinned, sipping the fizzy wine, feeling the warmth of their belief in me. This wasn't just a team, they were my people, the ones who'd seen my vision from the start. We sprawled on the studio's worn couches, sketches and mood boards scattered around, and they demanded the full story. I told them about the dinner, the disowning, the call from Vance and Quill that flipped it all. They gasped at the right moments, cursed my family's names, and high-fived when I got to the part where I walked out. Barney, usually quiet, leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Darla, you didn't just win a deal, you won yourself." I blinked, his words hitting deep. He was right, the Rigsbys had tried to define me, but I'd defined myself instead. Selma raised her mug again. "To chosen family." she said, and we drank, the moment sealing something unspoken. These were the people who'd stayed up late with me, tweaking designs, eating takeout, believing in Winstead Designs when it was just a dream. They didn't care about my last name or my bank balance. They cared about the work, the heart, the fight. We talked for hours, swapping stories. Kermit confessed he'd been cut off by his own parents for dropping out of law school to chase typography. Selma shared how her conservative aunt called her branding career frivolous, yet she'd built a portfolio that landed her here. Barney shyly admitted his dad thought coding was nerd stuff, but he'd coded our award-winning app. We laughed, not because it was funny, but because we got it. We'd all been underestimated and we'd all kept going. The contrast to the Rigsby dinner was stark. There, I'd been a ghost, my voice drowned out by their judgment. Here, I was seen, heard, celebrated. The studio, with its messy desks and half-finished sketches, felt more like home than that cold mansion ever had. As the night wound down, Kermit draped an arm around my shoulders, saying, "You're our legacy, Darla." I smiled, my throat tight. The Rigsbys could keep their banking empire. I'd built something better, a family that chose me, a life that fit me. And with the Vance & Quill deal locked in, the world was about to know it. The high from the studio celebration carried me through the next morning, but the fallout from the Rigsby dinner was waiting. My phone was a minefield. Missed calls from Mom, a curt voicemail from Dad, and a text from Marla that read, "We need to talk. You can't just walk out like that." I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold. Part of me wanted to ignore them, let their stunned silence at the dinner be the last word. But I knew better. The Rigsbys didn't let go easily, and if I didn't set boundaries now, they'd try to claw their way back into my life, acting like nothing happened. I met Mom for coffee at a neutral spot, a quiet cafe far from Rosedale. She was already there, dressed in her usual tailored perfection, but her eyes were red-rimmed. "Darla?" she started, voice soft. "We were wrong. We didn't understand how serious your work is." It sounded sincere, but I'd heard her apologies before, always followed by a but. Sure enough, she added, "But you have to understand, we were trying to protect the family legacy." I sipped my latte, unmoved. "Your legacy, Mom, not mine. You cut me off because I didn't fit your script. I'm not coming back to that." She flinched, then tried again, offering to support my business, maybe even invest. I almost laughed. "I don't need your money," I said. "Winstead Designs is fine, better than fine." I laid it out, the Vance & Quill deal, the awards, the team. Her face fell, realizing I wasn't bluffing. I ended it firmly. "If you want to be in my life, you respect my work and my choices. No more jabs, no more hobby talk, that's the deal." She nodded, but I could tell it stung. I left the cafe feeling lighter, like I'd drawn a line in the sand. Dad was tougher. He called, asking me to meet at his office, all business. I went, more out of curiosity than hope. His corner office screamed Rigsby power, mahogany desk, city views, framed photos of Wendell and Marla's banking milestones. None of me. He didn't apologize, just said, "You've done well, Darla. Let's put this behind us, join the family firm, use your skills for us." It was a power play, not a truce. I stood tall. "I'm not your employee, Dad. I'm my own boss. If you can't accept that, we're done." His jaw tightened, but he didn't push. I walked out knowing that door might stay closed for a while. Marla and Floyd sent half-hearted emails congratulating me but slipping in digs about family loyalty. I didn't respond. Wendell was the only one who seemed genuinely rattled, texting, "I didn't know, Darla, I'm sorry." I replied, "Thanks, but actions matter, show me you get it." He hasn't yet, but I left the door cracked, just in case. Back at the studio, I focused on what mattered. The Vance & Quill deal was moving fast, press releases were drafted, and my team was prepping for the launch. I set new rules for myself. No more chasing Rigsby approval, no more swallowing their slights. If they wanted to be part of my world, they'd come to me on my terms. Kermit noticed my focus, joking, "You're a fortress now, boss." He was right, I'd built walls, not to keep everyone out, but to protect what I'd earned. The Rigsbys could knock, but I decided who got in. And as I signed off on our latest design, the future felt like mine to shape, no apologies needed. With the Vance & Quill deal signed, Winstead Designs was suddenly everywhere. Design Week, Ad Age, even a feature in Fast Company calling me the visionary redefining branding. The studio was buzzing, our team scrambling to handle the influx of new clients while prepping for the tech giant's rebrand launch. But beyond the chaos, I saw a chance to do more than just succeed. I wanted to reshape what the Rigsby name could mean, not for my family, but for me and the world I was building. I started by giving back. Growing up, I'd seen how the Rigsbys used their wealth. Fancy retreats, splashy donations to causes that got their name on plaques. It was all about status. I wanted impact. So I launched a pro bono arm of Winstead Designs, offering free branding services to small nonprofits and community groups. Our first project was a literacy program for kids in underserved Toronto neighborhoods. Selma led the charge, designing a vibrant logo and campaign that made the program feel like a movement. When we unveiled it at their community center, the kids' faces lit up and the director hugged me, saying, "You gave us a voice." That moment hit harder than any award. I didn't stop there. I set up a scholarship at OCAD University, my alma mater, for students pursuing design against the odds, kids like me whose families didn't get it. I named it the Winstead Grant, not Rigsby, because this was my legacy, built from my hustle. The first recipient, a shy 19-year-old named Tilda, sent me a thank you note, saying my story kept her going when her parents pushed her toward accounting. I framed it and hung it in the studio, right next to our Clio. The Rigsby name still lingered though, and I decided to reclaim it on my terms. I didn't want to erase my past, just redefine it. At the tech giant's rebrand launch, a glitzy event in a downtown Toronto ballroom, I took the stage as Darla Winstead Rigsby. The crowd, industry bigwigs, press, my team, watched as I unveiled our campaign, a bold, human-centered design that earned a standing ovation. In my speech, I nodded to my roots. I come from a family of bankers, but I chose to build something different, a legacy of creativity, inclusion, and impact. The press ate it up, with headlines calling me the Rigsby who broke the mold. My family saw it too. Wendell texted, "Saw your speech, impressive." I didn't reply, but it felt good to know they were watching. I also mentored young designers, hosting workshops at the studio. Kermit and Barney taught typography and coding, while Selma shared branding tips. One night, a student asked me how I kept going when my family doubted me. I told her the truth. Their doubt was fuel. Every no pushed me to prove them wrong, but eventually I proved it to myself. The room nodded, and I realized I wasn't just teaching design, I was passing on resilience. The Rigsbys hadn't reached out much since my boundaries took, and I was okay with that. My work, my team, my impact, these were my anchors now. The launch event's success cemented it. I'd taken a name that once boxed me in and made it synonymous with something bigger. As I left the ballroom, Kermit slung an arm around me, saying, "You're a legend, Darla." I laughed, but deep down, I felt it. I wasn't just a Rigsby anymore. I was a force, and the world knew it. The weeks after the tech giant's rebrand launch were a whirlwind. Interviews, new clients, my team working overtime to keep up. But late at night, when the studio was quiet and it was just me and a sketchbook, I started to reflect. I'd spent so long fighting to prove myself, to the Rigsbys, to the world, that I hadn't stopped to ask what it all meant. Sitting on my apartment balcony, the Toronto skyline glittering below, I realized something. My worth wasn't in the awards, the headlines, or even the Vance and Quill deal. It was in me, always had been. I thought back to that 13-year-old girl, clutching a crumpled certificate, desperate for her family's nod. She'd been enough even then, but I hadn't known it. Every slight, every no-space excuse had pushed me to build Winstead Designs, to find Kermit, Selma, and Barney, to create something that mattered. The Rigsby's rejection hadn't broken me. It had freed me to become who I was meant to be. I didn't need their approval anymore because I approved of myself. That realization felt like a deep breath after years underwater. I started small rituals to anchor that peace. Mornings became mine, coffee, a sketch, no emails until 10. I'd draw for fun like I did as a kid, not for clients or awards. One day I sketched a logo for a fictional cafe, all whimsy and color, and pinned it above my desk. It reminded me why I'd started, not to prove a point but because I loved it. I also leaned into my chosen family. Sunday dinners with the team became a thing. Selma's lasagna, Kermit's terrible playlists, Barney's shy jokes. They weren't just colleagues, they were home. The Rigsbys stayed distant, and I was okay with that. Mom sent a tentative email, congratulating me on the launch. I replied politely but kept my walls up. Wendell showed up at the studio once, awkward but earnest, saying he wanted to understand my work. I gave him a tour, showed him our boards, but didn't let him in too far. Trust would take time, if it came at all. For now, I was content building my world without their shadow. I also found peace in giving back. The Winstead grant grew, with Tilda and other students sending me their designs, each one a spark of what I'd felt at their age. Mentoring them, seeing their confidence bloom, closed a loop I hadn't known was open. I wasn't just succeeding, I was lifting others up, making space for the dreamers the world tried to box in. That felt like legacy, the real kind. I sat on my balcony, sketching under the stars. I felt a quiet certainty. The Rigsbys could keep their banking empire, their retreats, their mold. I'd built something better, a life that fit me, a name that meant something true. I was Darla Winstead Rigsby. Not because of them, but because of me. And that was enough. Have you ever felt like you had to prove your worth to the people who should have seen it all along? I've been there, and I know how heavy that fight can be. If my story hit home, drop a comment below. Share your own journey, your wins, your struggles. I'd love to hear how you're carving out your space in the world. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. You don't need anyone's permission to be enough, you already are. Keep building, keep dreaming, and know that your worth is yours to claim.